In October of 2003, I was having a day. I was the director of a refugee development center in Lansing, Michigan, which was really just like 3 classrooms in the second floor of a church, pretty run down, and it was all cobbled together, but we had big dreams. And I needed to write some grants. But I just penned kind of a new partnership with Michigan State University's Center for Service Learning and Civic Engagement, and it was the one thing that was keeping the center afloat. In fact, it was bringing 300 service learning students from TE 250 into the center to work with young people, to work with adults, to work with people that needed to connect with our community. It was a great partnership. But again, on that day, I was having a day. I had my coffee ready, I had the computer up, I was going to write that grant. And then I got a buzzer. So at the center, we keep the door locked on the first floor, and anytime somebody comes up, they have to ring this buzzer. And because my office was down the hall, the buzzer would ring, and I'd have to run and hit the button, and then run back to my office and see who showed up. So the buzzer hit. 4 MSU students show up, and they say to me, "We're here for the brochure." I said, "What? What brochure?" They said, "Well, we're here to do the brochure. You know, you need a brochure." And I said, "No, we have a brochure. We've worked on it. We put it together. We have professionals to help us out." "Well, our professor said you need a brochure. So you need a brochure, and you're on the list here. So list of all the places that need brochures, you're one of them. We're here. You need that brochure." And I was like, "Well, you know, I have a grant to do." "Well, you need a brochure." So I said, "Okay, why don't you take a seat here? I'm going to go make a phone call, see if I can figure out who's your professor again." Okay. Went to start making phone calls, and then the buzzer rings. The buzzer goes off. Run down the hall, hit the button, run back to my office, proceed to try to make phone calls, and there's another group of 4 students. "We're here about the brochure." Okay, I know that brochure now, so I'm not confused. "Take a seat. Let's figure out what's up with this brochure, and we'll see what we can do." I sit down in my office, ready to make phone calls. I get a phone call. And the person on the other line says, "I'm calling about my daughter." "Your daughter? What about your daughter?" "Well, she's not going to come in to volunteer this afternoon." "Okay, that's all right. You know, I'm too bad. I wish she could. Is she okay?" And he said, "Well, that's what I'm concerned about. You know, that refugee development center is in downtown Lansing. It's dangerous. I don't want my daughter going down there to work." And I said, "Well, okay. I live 3 blocks from here. It seems to be okay to me, but all right." Knock on the door. "What about the brochure?" Right? So that was my day. That's how it was going. And I hadn't gotten near the grant. And then finally, a little bit later on, somebody, actually, this is funny, from Syracuse University called and said, "I'm here early for the interview." "What interview?" "You know, the one we were going to do tomorrow for the research on how communities and universities partner." And I said, "Great, I've got some things to say. Why don't you just come right in?" So that's how my day went. The volunteer never showed up. I think her dad convinced her. We did do 2 brochures, I'm pretty sure, but I never saw them. And we had a wonderful discussion. This guy got an earful for 2 hours that afternoon. And then I was invited to DC to take part in this whole conference about how people connect with universities and partner and all that kind of stuff. So I loved it. It was wonderful. Free trip. So that day, though, is something that sticks in my mind every time I think about the work I do now. Because flash forward a decade, and I'm on the other side. I'm work with the Residential College in the Arts and Humanities. We've developed a whole curriculum around civic engagement. And it's that day and days like that that helped me see the need for a model for how we engage. We have to think about how we work with students in terms of how do they gain the insight to understand what it means to work in community. How do they understand who they are, who these communities are? How do they build useful and generative relationships? in our college, we make sure that there's a long partnership that's been developed before we even start to move into kind of action stuff or, making brochures. And so that's kind of the way we've been thinking about it for a long time. And we've bought in a large way, to Musil's idea of this generative way of engaging in community. But at the same time, as someone that works on this day in, day out, I always ask myself, but why does it have to be so hard? It's always so difficult. You get one step in and you're building a beautiful relationship, and then a professor gives a brochure assignment to somebody and the whole partnership's ruined. And so I think I have some ideas about why it's so hard. And so I want to just run through a couple of those for you today. So does anybody, actually I haven't read this book, but I heard about it. Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. You know that book? So I have this philosophy or this idea, and it may be wrong, but I'm going to try it out with you. And I call it community is from people on the streets, and university is from data in the tower. Okay? And what I mean by that is that what we believe in the community and what we believe in universities aren't always the same thing. And if we assume that they're the same thing, then it's going to be difficult for us to kind of get to that generative engagement that we all so want to achieve in these with each other. What do I mean by these? Community, your reputation, your promotion, who you are, is dictated by how well you work with others. It's your connections that dictate how well you work with others and who you are and how many people want to work with you. That requires you to never say no, or almost never say no, because you want to show people that you work well. And you also are very pragmatic. You want to, whatever works, whatever's going to make it happen. And so that's kind of built into that structure. The motto you might have is, we are more connected than others. That might be the motto for community. If you look at the university, what gets you promotion, what advances your reputation are new ideas. It's knowledge. It's data. It's the way you can work well with ideas. And people often say, I've even heard this, we're paid to think. So folks in universities are often great at managing data, great at disseminating these new ideas, and teaching and doing all these things that are incredibly necessary. You're not afraid to say no. There's a system in place that allows people to disseminate new ideas, and sometimes that requires you to say no because you want to work on the new ideas. And it's especially when it's outside of your discipline, you're not afraid to say no. And so there's that piece as well. And the motto might be, we know more and more. And so you've got these kind of two different structures sometimes that make it difficult for people to connect. But I believe that there is a belief system that is common between the two. And that is the desire inside of universities and the desire inside of communities for change. I think we all believe in that. We all want to see that, and we have different ways of going about it. Universities have a time-honored way of collecting data and disseminating new knowledge and new ideas. Communities have a way where, well, sometimes they take that data and new ideas and work with others and connect with others and bring it all together. And I think that if we kind of brought those two together in a focus on change, we could make real change. I've seen it work. Remember that refugee development center I worked with? So 300 students came in every afternoon and changed the lives of students. On its face, it looked like service learning, and it might have been. But those students, 14 of them now have graduated from university, and 7 of them are in higher education, of the young people there. That's real change. Not long after that day I had, someone came from the university and said, hey, let's go out to lunch. She sat down with me, and she said, I know you've been having a hard time trying to get your grants written. And I want to sit down with you and work with you and help you evaluate what you're doing so you can understand what you're doing. and so that we can begin to write some grants together to make this center the kind of place it can be. We did that. And today, the center is helping more than 400 children every day after school through wraparound services with people. It is working with parents. It is working with teachers. It is working with the schools, and it's making a real difference. And yes, there were differences in the way that we both looked at the world. But when we decided we wanted to change the way a place operates, change the way a community works, change the systems by which we operate every day, it was only with a university and a community partnership that made that happen. Thank you.